Yeah.
Hold on. Yeah. Yes, I have your presentation.
Okay, good. Thank you. And the last one, right?
Yes.
So, good afternoon. My name is Andreas Klick. I was professor here at this university for nearly 40 years. Since 3 years, I'm already retired, but I was asked to chair this session about climate change modeling, studies, and scaling. And this session we have we have 5 different presentations with presenters from 4 different continents. Each presenter will have 15 minutes. So after 30 minutes, I will stand up. And we have 1 or 2 minutes to finish it. I would like to have maybe at least 1 or 2 questions. Time for questions. And yeah, that's it for the moment. We start with the first presentation. It's about charting agricultural pathways, multi-criteria priority, mapping for India's sustainable transition, presented by Gopal Kumar. You're not there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. So the floor is yours.
Is Karen here or? Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Sudarshan. I am from India. So I am from International Water Management Institute. And this is the topic we have been working on for a while. It is starting agricultural pathways, multi-criteria priority mapping for India's sustainable transition. So, before going into the tool or the map, I want to give a basis of why we developed this map. There is a lot of challenges in India, which are like challenged with. India is home to 18% of human population and 15% of animal population, with only 2% of lands and 4% of annual renewable water. And most of the water is used in agriculture as such, and 43% of the labor force is, employed in agriculture. And the main challenge in India these days is the steady increase in chemical fertilizer used in agriculture, which is currently about 137 kilogram per hectare. So to move away from these challenges, we need to identify priority areas to build a sustainable farming practices that are the regions that are best suited for integrated farming system, agroecological practices, or zero budget. So there are in India, there are already so many practices that's going on. And the world famous one is APCNF, we call it Andhra Pradesh Community Managed Natural Farming. About 800,000 farmers are enrolled in that. And it's in only one state. Out of the 30 states in India, only one state is in full place doing natural farming. Right now, it's about 900,000 farmers, and mostly small scale, small and poor farmers. And in other states, there are other kind of practices like nutrient management, integrated farming system, organic farming assets. And one of the things that's lacking in India is where do we prioritize this sort of practices? Natural farming, organic farming. Can we do it in all the regions? So one such example is Sri Lanka, where they did natural farming in large scale, and it ended up being a disaster. So while ensuring the food security of the country, we also need to maintain the ecosystem services. Like while we are ensuring the food security, we are destroying the ecosystem services on the way. So, and agroecological farming is, agroecology is a combination of various farming systems, which can be organic, regenerative agriculture, natural farming. So it's a broader thematic area. And we need to, research question here, where do we prioritize this farming practices on? So for that, we wanted to create a map to see which regions the government or state government or central government or FPOs can focus on. And there are few maps in the right currently being published, but there are limited to very few thematic areas. And if you look at the principles of agroecology, it's not only on the on-field activities, but also co-creation or improving the social values there, human. There are 13 such principles, and recycling, connectivity, and so many aspects are there in the agroecological principles. So those aspects are not being considered. So we are trying to consider those aspects. And finally, we need a simple and robust agroecological map that can be easily adopted. So within this, we develop two such outputs. One is a national level map, which will tell you where these regions are. And the second level is a policy guidance tool which help all the stakeholders to focus which regions, focus the budget or all the available resources where that can be focused. So what does is it helps avoid siloed implementation and thin distribution of resources, and it's critical for scaling out agroecological practices and other. So first level, like there are two levels of maps, as I mentioned. One is India level map. So for this, what we have done is we have taken all these digital maps, which are land and surface temperature maps, vapor transpiration, rainfall, productivity, solar radiation, fertilizer statistics, pre-monsoon groundwater level, digital elevation, and land use land cover. And what we have done is we have overlaid all these maps. First, we have assigned weightage criteria, which within each map there are like sub-layer, and we have assigned weightage. What is the priority that should be given, and all these maps are analyzed and given a composite map is prepared. So, for example, we added crop layer. We have Kharif, Rabi, and Zaid season. Kharif is basically monsoon season crops. Rabi is some winter, and Zaid is summer season. And there are like 23% of the area where they both do Kharif and Rabi season. So, and also we are trying to focus on biomass, how much biomass per hectare is being produced. And if you look at it, government's priority is always ensuring food security. They are not focused on natural farming. Their primary focus is on make sure that everybody is fed. It doesn't matter how it comes from. So government's priority is always on regions where net primary productivity is always higher, which is 30 tons, these regions here. And these are the regions, these are these dry land areas where the productivity is very less. And fertilizer consumption. And we also want to see which areas uh, where fertilizer is being confused, NPK, where NPK is consumed, and also rainfall, which area receives higher rainfall and which areas receive lower rainfall. And if you look at the perspective of researchers and government, it's always contrasting. Government's approach is they want to ensure the status quo, like they want to keep on producing whatever they are doing. But from researchers' perspective, they want to move away from using chemical fertilizer to natural fertilizers. So that's why we have analyzed all these aspects, and we have actually created two different maps, one for the government stakeholders and one for the researchers. And this is a length of the growing period for different crops and the number of rainy days as such. That is one more layer. And the temperature as such, like temperature exceeding greater than 35 degrees Celsius, like which are this region uh, that has higher temperature, and usually it's correlated with dry areas like where the primary productivity is very less. Like the region here is that Rajasthan area where the temperature is always high, and it's mostly this desert region here. And the aridity also we have calculated. And slope also we have calculated. And the second is solar radiation. These are the layers we have computed. And so for each of these maps, we have assigned weightages. So how did we determine the weightages from? We asked experts, key informant interviews on various aspects on their particular fields, like from the government sides, from the researchers side, what should we prioritize now? And we have taken an average value of all these various experts' opinion, and we have assigned weightage. Like, for example, NPK, whichever area is having NPK consumption less than 50 kilogram per hectare, the weightage should be given more. And slight vice versa, like as the consumption increase, the weightage decreases. And so you would assume that here by about 150 around, the weightage should be very less. But since we have taken the opinion of the government stakeholders as well, their priority is to ensure food security, right? So they are focused on supplying the fertilizer to the farmer as such. Similarly, primary productivity, aridity index. So we have taken the farmers' input and we have created a priority map. This is from the government stakeholders' point of view. Like government want to concerns us, and they want to primarily focus on rain-fed agriculture because irrigated agriculture they want to maintain the status. So where irrigated regions are the regions where the productivity is always higher, yields and higher regions. They don't want to shift those regions into natural farming, and in turn leads to lower yields. They want to prioritize more on the uh, dry areas, these regions where rainfall is low, temperature is high, productivity is less, all this way. And about we have classified this priority map based on the available agriculture area. Priority one should be these regions where about 37 to 38 million hectares can be converted to natural farming. Priority two should be the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Priority three also it's mostly on the Indo-Gangetic Plain. And priority four is on the southern part of India and other Indo-Gangetic. So basically 1/3 of the existing agricultural land can be aimed for agroecological transition. But coming to the researcher scientific perspective, which is for us, we want to convert the land which are currently higher fertilizer consumption is already being used. We want to reduce the fertilizer consumption from that area to lower consumption. So we have created the another map from the initiative perspective. The agroecology initiative where various researchers are working. We tried region here Indo-Gangetic Plain. It's a highly irrigated area. That's where the fertilizer consumption are really high, and we want to convert those into natural farming areas as such. Ideally, there should be a middle ground between map one and map two. So if you give up single map, then it doesn't usually work. It always has to match them right. If you want to go to 100 maps, you cannot straight away do 100 maps. You have to go step by step, 1 map, 2 maps. So that's the plan. So once you have created a map, then we have created the second aspect. So we know the regions where we want to uh, adopt natural or agroecological farming. Now we want to know which policies are conducive of these practices. So what we have done is we have taken all the national level and state level policies and analyzed across 13 principles of agroecology. Uh, and these are the thematic areas we analyzed. Activities, what are the activities? What is the institutional arrangement, subsidies, trend in budget. So, and finally, we have categorized into using agroecology criteria tool and financial assessment tool to rate the policies on this on agroecological index. So the usage of the tool is, so in the earlier map I showed, we know which are the regions we want to adopt agroecological practice or natural farming. But within the region, we want to know what aspect we want to improve. That it can be improving soil health, recycling, biodiversity, or synergy. So the tool basically helps you to do that. What are the policies that are relevant to the region? Like there are national policies, but that's not applicable to all the regions in India. So in that way, we have classified it. So this is the dashboard of the tool. Either you can look at all of India, what are the policies in India and on different thematic areas. Once you select the region and the thematic areas, it will tell you what are the policies that can be that are relevant to that region. And here is the options you can do. You can see a geographical extent, institutional setup, subsidy details, activities, budget trend. And this is the interesting part, subsidy details. Even though for researcher or government stakeholders, this might seem what is new about it. But when we are working with the smallholder farmers, they are not aware of so many policies and programs that they don't even know there are subsidies that are they are eligible for. So that's why we want to capture this element. And so this is the output. Like if you click on list of activities within a policy to list all the activities, what is the institutional arrangement within the policy, and also subsidies. Let's say this is an example for a biogas plant, recycling aspect of agroecology. It will tell you if it's a 1 meter cube biogas plant, these are the subsidies for various category of people. So, and it will tell also display the information on activities relevant to agroecological principles. And also this can be applied to state-wise also. Instead of looking at national like stakeholders, if I want to do in a local scale, they can use that as well. And so both this aspect, the target audience is from national level stakeholder to the farmer. And we are trying to cover, using this, we are trying to cover both all this wide range of stakeholders. And our priority has been actually, rather than being a research paper, it has to be utilized on the field. Somebody has to benefit from the field. So somebody has to adopt natural farming. So that's our output. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any questions or suggestions are welcome.
Thank you for the nice presentation. Right, so the dashboard of the open source.
No, right now we are testing with few government stakeholders and private agencies. And they are giving some feedback, they should be in regional language because this will be useful for them. But India is a diverse country, there are like hundreds of languages, so what we are trying to roll up, how can we translate this in a way that can be simply translated to English to regional language. That we are trying.
So will it be open source?
Definitely.
One more short question, please.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm wondering, put different types of map for one is government stakeholder and another is the researcher. So how did you synchronize these two types of map for the implementing the program? Because we need both types of stakeholder for the implementation of the program. In the second guidelines we see, we have only similar types of guidelines. So guidelines are not different from the side of government stakeholder, from the side of researcher. So same guidelines, same policy, why did you make different?
Yeah, that is needed. Government primary focus is always ensuring food security. If they don't want to focus on the irrigated areas because those are the high yielding areas. But those are the regions where fertilizer consumption is. So there, when we discussed with farmers, they said, okay, focus your research on the rain-fed areas where they grow out of 3 seasons, they grow only 1 season. They don't want to that's the irrigated areas. And but on the other aspect, researchers side, we want to focus on the regions where fertilizer consumption is high and which is actually impacting the ecosystem.
So we need to.
Converge.
Maybe
both
can
sides of
we could
effort
put
in
the
balance.
discussion in the website?
So that's the next step. So as I mentioned, like there should be a middle ground and there will be a series of consultations we have planned and see, and once so we have to test it in the field with few pilot programs with few district level officers and see which works and which doesn't. And then we can have a single map that can help all this thing.
Thank you very much. For the next presentation will be about modern agroforestry adoption dynamics among smallholder farmers in rural Zambia. Age-based approach presented by Brigitte Wilson from Leibniz University of Hannover.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Brigitte Wiesing. I'm from the Institute for Environmental Economics and World Trade of the Leibniz University in Hanover. And today I want to present modeling agroforestry adoption dynamics among smallholder farmers in rural Zambia, an agent-based approach. I write this paper together with my colleague Lucia Geithler, who's also here today, and our professor Ulrike Grother. So first, why do we want to focus on the study? We care about agroforestry because it offers a sustainable solution to both current and emerging challenges and shocks. And as we focus on a study area, which is a rural area with agricultural livelihoods, which is facing numerous challenges due to limited resources and also climate variability, we see the need for understanding the farmers' decision-making processes for tailored support. So we want to deepen the knowledge on how farmers make their decisions in the agroforestry context to create policy approaches that are tailored to this system and to increase the agroforestry adoption in the end. For our theoretical framework, we mainly base on the capability approach by Zen and also implemented a few other theories from literature. First, we created our extrinsic factors. So we have the livelihood assets of the households, the institutional context the households interact in, and the socioeconomic context. In a second step, we have the intrinsic factors. So the individual preferences of the households, their ambitions, so the gap between the current and the aspired level of welfare. So what is their motivation? Where do they want to go? And the livelihood aspirations. So do they have on-farm aspirations or off-farm aspirations, or maybe none of the two? And then in the next step, we also have include the vulnerability context that is affecting the households. And all of these factors lead to the capabilities of the households. So what can they achieve? What are their options with the set that they are interacting with their extrinsic factors and their intrinsic factors? And we mainly focus on the adoption decision that is based on these capabilities. So we want to see with the given capabilities of the household, what will they do in the adoption context? The data that we used was collected in cooperation with ICRA, the Humboldt University in Berlin, and Comarco, and it's part of the Fruit Tree Portfolio project. And we mainly include two surveys here, two quantitative surveys. First, we have an ex-post survey from rural Kenya. So here the project was implemented already, and there was a survey conducted afterwards. So we know how many households adopted and what are the characteristics of these households. We mainly use this as a secondary data set in our model. So we use it to get a better understanding of how the adoption process is affecting the households. And then we have a second data set, the ex-ante data set from rural Zambia, where 745 households were included. This is the main data set that we use in our model. So the other data set is just as a secondary information source, but these households, these 745 households, are implemented in our later model. And we want to see how their adoption decision is performed. For our objectives, we first want to simulate how individual factors, including livelihood aspirations, influence the adoption of agroforestry practices among smallholder farmers in Zambia. And second, we want to explore strategies to empower smallholder farmers to adopt agroforestry practices effectively, also considering spillover effects from early adopters to non-adopters. Our main contribution here is the methodological advancement through ADM, through agent-based modeling. So here we include dynamic decisions and also the spillover effect. So if we implement the project again after some time, what did the non-adopters learn? What could they observe from the initial adopters? For our variable selection, we performed two different kinds of variable inputs. First, we performed a literature review. So we scanned the literature, which factors are significant for agroforestry adoption, what do we have to include in our model. And in the second step, we looked at the Kenya data set. We had a look at where we created a logistic regression on adoption. So we wanted to identify which are the significant variables here, as we also have most of these variables in our Zambia data set, and therefore we could implement this into our model. And additionally, we have some intrinsic factors here. We have the ambitions. So there's a nonlinear relationship between the ambitions and adoption. So there's an inverted U shape. In the beginning, if the ambitions that the households want to reach are very far away from the initial situation, there can be some kind of frustration. So they will not really act on this. Then we have the motivation stage in the beginning and the middle. And in the end, the stagnation, if it's quite close to each other and they are not really motivated to implement some changes to get to this aspired level. And then we have also the aspirations and their relationship with the adoption in our model. To model, we want to create an agent-based model. Maybe a very quick overview for those of you who didn't hear about it before. Agent-based modeling is a computer-supported tool used to simulate phenomena in terms of agents. This means we have our individual agents in the model, in our case, the households, that have their own characteristics and follow certain behavior rules. And these households can make decisions while interacting with each other and also interact with the environment. And therefore, micro-level modeling can lead to emerging phenomena on the macro level. So if you think about yourself, each one of you has their own characteristics, you have your own assets, you make your own decisions every day, and somehow we all ended up here in this room. We have some kind of macro-level outcome because each one of you made your own decisions and ended up here in the end. In particular, for our model, this means we start with the extrinsic factors of the households. We implement the Zambia data set. We import the age, the farm size, the number of crops, and so on, several extrinsic factors that the household exhibit. We import them into the data set, and this leads to some kind of economic potential of the household to adopt agroforestry. For example, if we have a household that has a chronic illness and there's only one member in this household, they have a very low economic potential. They are not very likely to adopt agroforestry. And this is why they would drop out and perform business as usual. We also include other factors. So we include the knowledge of the households. Did they participate in any agricultural training before? Are they a member of a farmer group? Then we include the perception of agroforestry. What does the household think about agroforestry at the moment? And also the aspirations. So here we include, does the household have on-farm aspirations, off-farm aspirations? And here, based on literature, we define some kind of probability. We know how the on-farm aspirations and ambitions, the interrelation can lead to the adoption. So we have some probabilities here. And this leads to a final probability of each individual household to adopt agroforestry. So after we had a look at all of these extrinsic and intrinsic factors, we know what probability has the household to adopt agroforestry in the end. And then the households make their final decision. So either they adopt or they do not adopt and perform business as usual. So this is the current state of our model. And in our next step, we plan to implement the spillover effects. And here We want to simulate what happens if the project is performed after 5 years again. So the households had the opportunity to adopt or not adopt the agroforestry. And now we want to see what happens if we come back after 5 years, for example, and they could learn already, they could observe the initial adopters, they could see what was their outcome, which challenges did they face, how did they find a solution for these challenges. So now we want to see, are there some knowledge spillovers or also ambition spillovers? So if they see, okay, the other households are very lucky with their adoption decision, so maybe they will also change their ambitions. This is our first outcome, so our first results. Here in our base model, we included all of the variables based on the literature and our Kenyan data set and in logistic regression, and we didn't change anything there yet. Everything is based on the theories and the logistic regression. And then we wanted to, and yeah, here we can see a share of adopters of 53% in the first line. If we implement this model, if we let it run for a lot of times because there's some kind of probability in there. And of course, we need to repeat it to see what is the mean value in the end. And then we wanted to change the knowledge variables, the perception and the economic potential to see how are the changes in these variables adjusting the outcome. So if we would change the knowledge, if we implement here some kind of training to improve the knowledge, what would happen? So we increased and decreased these variables to see how will this change our outcome. For the knowledge, we can see that it's actually still quite similar to our base model. So it doesn't change that much. Also for the perception, we can see that it's very similar to the base model. And for the economic potential, we can see that there are big changes compared to our base model. So there's a big influence here. Here we can see the outcome in kind of a graph. I think it's a better overview to understand what's happening here. We have our base model, which is the red dotted line. And then for the calibrate knowledge and calibrate perception, we can see that they are increasing in the beginning. So if we increase these variables, the share of adopters is increasing, but at some point it's slowing down and we have some kind of plateau effect. But for the economic potential, we can see that it's increasing more drastically and also for a longer time. To conclude, we could see that the cognitive factors show diminishing returns with the saturation effect after certain factor levels. So these cognitive factors are very important for the adoption decision, but at some point, a further increase is not increasing the adoption rate anymore. So we can see, it doesn't make sense to always increase the knowledge and so on. At some point, the households want to perform agroforestry. They have their intrinsic motivators. They are at a certain level. They cannot be increased anymore, but they are constrained because of some kind of economic constraints. So the economic potential is also very significant and a scalable driver of adoption. At some point, maybe the households want to perform agroforestry, but they are limited due to land limitations, for example. And then even if they are very motivated, they just cannot implement this agroforestry. So we could see there's some adoption ceiling. So the adoption rates are ultimately constrained by non-cognitive barriers in our model. And our model was integrating both cognitive and economic factors to predict adoption patterns. So it could be used in future to try to find out if we change these factors, how will this also change the adoption decision in the end. For our next steps, we want to include the spillover effect, as I said before. So here we are currently thinking about how to quantify these changes. So how can we change the knowledge or the ambition if they can observe the initial adopters. So if somebody has ideas here, we look forward to your feedback. This is a challenge that we are facing at the moment. So if you have any experience, please let us know. Then we also want to continue testing the most influential variables. And finally, we want to create a more detailed option for agroforestry adoption by also including disadoption, for example. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
question.
So you mean for the market price for like trees, for example, or what exactly do you mean? Again?
What is the profit flow?
So we have different fruit trees that can be adopted. So actually, in this case, there's a fruit tree portfolio project. So they are provided with trees. They do not have to buy them themselves. The project will be performed again, and then they will be asked if they want to implement these trees, and the trees are provided for them. So they do not have to buy them.
You have a question?
I have a couple of questions. Well, I'll be quick. I was wondering functionally, how is aspiration different from ambition in your model? On that. And then also, does your model sort of allow for the fact that ambition could be negatively correlated to adoption? In that, if I'm a farmer who's doing very well doing conventional crop farming, and my ambition is just to maximize how much income I have. Actually, the more ambition I have to maximize my income, the less likely I am to change my practice to adopt something else. Yeah. But ecology, or it could be with this natural farming or anything. So could you imagine a situation where actually high ambition could actually lead to less adoption? And then finally, I think I was wondering if the model is just looking at the sort of extensive margin and then whether you adopt or not, versus also the intensive margin on how much of your income is coming from agriculture versus other.
Okay, thank you. So first, for the aspirations and ambitions, we use like a combination. We base on another paper, which was already analyzing the combination of ambitions and aspirations and how the adoption rates are changing in the end. So based on this, we can see if they, for example, are in the medium part of ambitions and have on-farm aspirations, how high would be the probability of them to adopt agroforestry. So it's more like an interrelation of these two concepts. Yes, and for the last question, could you repeat it, please?
Yeah, so my second question was whether there could be a negative relation between ambition or aspiration and adoption. If you're a farmer who's ambitious about just maximizing my income, and if like crop farming is giving me a lot of income, I might say, I'm already doing so well. Why should I? My ambition is to make more money. Why should I go into this uncharted terrain of agroforestry where I don't know how much?
Yeah. Okay, and that should be also included already in the first paper that we based on, where this aspiration and ambition was analyzed in more detail. So we only include the final outcomes of this paper, so how these combinations of aspiration and ambition would lead to different adoption models.
And finally, you define adoption only as whether you do agroforestry or not how much agroforestry.
Yes, exactly. That's also the last point for our next steps, where we want to create a more detailed definition of agriculture. This is it.
Okay, thank you very much. We did leave the question to the hopefully we have some time. The next presentation will be about drought beyond the horizon, drawing new borders along spatial classes of agricultural relevant extreme weather. Presented by Harold Afrika-Noy, but we
It will be
presented by
online.
Zoom.
Yes, 1 second.
So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Should I share my screen? Or is anyone who is going to share from there?
1 second. I will just
Okay.
make you a little bit more louder so everyone can hear you.
Okay.
Do you want to share your screen yourself?
Yes, yeah, it would be good. Share. Let me know when you're seeing my screen.
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Harold Afrika-Noy. I am a researcher from CIAT and also a PhD student at Wageningen University. So this presentation that I'm going to present is basically related with the results of my first paper. And let me start with what we know about the drugs. First of all, as we all know, basically climate change is changing the statistical distribution of our previous climate, right? So now we have a new climate, which is characterized by having, let's say, more hot temperatures, right? Which at the end are producing extreme weather events, right? What we also know is that from the Paris Agreement in 2015, there has been a lot of work in developing strategies or tools for mitigating or adaptation against climate change. These plans that I previously mentioned are nationally framed. What this means is that the governments cannot intervene beyond their borders, except in some specific regions. However, the climate risks do not respect political border. So the aim that we wanted to accomplish in this research is to identify spatial clusters in which agriculturally relevant drought extremes tend to occur at the same time. The methodology that we follow basically is a spatiotemporal analysis in which we analyzed historical data from 1980 to 2022. We define a spatial scale of 25 kilometers. This is a global analysis. So what we define as our region of study are all the agricultural areas, I mean, rain-fed and irrigated areas where agriculture is taking place over the world. And we started by using daily data to construct a monthly drought index. This is the standardized precipitation and evapotranspiration index, which we define it with a lag of 6 months. It means it's highly, it takes a lag of 6 months within the growing seasons. We also do the analysis. We also did the analysis, sorry, defining regions in there is one predominant growing season and where there is more than one growing season. And we identify the extremes. So the extremes are defined by the maximum values of the SPEI in those regions and also in those time frames that we define. But the main characteristic or the main value added of this study is that we explore the spatial extreme dependence. We do this through calculating the F-monogram, which is a metric of extreme dependence. And with that metric, we compute we define time series clustering. With applying this methodology, what we identify are something that we call extreme drought clusters over the world. And at the end, we are interested to see what is the level of exposure of crops, but also of livestock. So to this end, we defined like two metrics, two different dimensions, the crop diversity, how the droughts are impacting those regions, and also the number of livestock units. And at the end, what those extreme drought clusters are telling us are the potential of transnational collaboration. So regarding with the results, those are the extreme drought clusters that we computed, as I said, over the world, over all the arable lands. And regions with one growing season, we identify 302 clusters, and places particularly over the tropics, characterized by 2 growing seasons, we identify 154 clusters. So as you can see here, basically the colors are not telling nothing but are telling us about the different locations where those clusters are located. Here, what also presented is the need for collaboration. So in this graph, what we are seeing is that we have around 42.5 national clusters, so clusters that are within the limits, within the borders of one specific country. But as you can see here, there is around 57.5% of transnational clusters. So that means that are clusters that are spanning over 2 or more than 2 neighboring countries. And it highlights the need for potential collaboration. As I said before, we also analyze the exposure of crops, but also livestock. So in this graph, what you are seeing are basically results per continent, in which in these maps, what you're seeing is like a bivariate color scale, where we are highlighting the extreme drought intensification, which is characterized by the slope of the time series. It is telling us if they are increasing or decreasing over time, or staying or remaining stable. But also they are telling us about the crop diversity in the blue scale. So as I said, yeah, those are the temporal patterns of droughts. And basically what we are interested in are highlighting the hotspot clusters that we define it as the places where there is a dramatic increase in extreme droughts, but also there is a high crop diversity. So in those red rectangles, in some that you're seeing in the maps, basically what we are highlighting are the potential hotspots where the priorities should be focused on. We develop the same metric for the livestock exposure. It's a combination of those two dimensions, the intensification of extreme droughts, and also the number of livestock units. So here, this is a more productivity approach, for those livestock areas. And basically, we highlighted which are the potential areas that transnational collaboration should be focused on to face basically extreme droughts over those regions. To conclude, basically, with this study, we quantify the spatial dependence of the extreme droughts and the level of exposure for crops and livestock on global arable lands. These results basically can support decision makers to prioritize adaptation strategies to combat extreme agricultural droughts. Another important point of the discussion, it's about the transnational climate governance, which is a highly researched area in which basically we are saying, okay, we are in a connected world, so it will be good to have this kind of quantitative evidence to provide insights and define which are the most vulnerable regions that are forgotten by national governments. With this study, we also establish basically collaboration agendas among governments for develop coordinated adaptation plans. And as I said, it could be used as a potential prioritization tool to identify vulnerable and exposed regions. So, thank you.
thank you very much for Mira, for your very interesting presentation. Are there questions? Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
I hear you pretty far. If you can closer to the mic.
Maybe we can.
Yeah, maybe now you can hear well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
great,
can hear you
great.
well.
I think it's a very interesting study, and I would love to see the real data. I just ask very few questions now. So you are saying that the clusters over time have increased. That is what your study said. So
Uh,
the situation is becoming more severe.
In most of the regions around the world, yes, but not in all of them. There are some exceptions,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, but you did not show which regions this is, but in your paper we would see that.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great, yeah, yeah. Then I just have from your hotspot idea. So you say it's a hotspot when you have an increase in clusters and at the same time a high crop variety. So
exactly.
why are you taking the high crop variety as a negative thing? Would you
Yeah.
not take something like, I don't know, staple crops or importance of crops?
Yeah, this is a good point, but actually the dimension that we are focusing is basically on food security. So food security basically can be understood as, or basically a way to approach it is through the crop diversity. So for example, in the case of Africa, there is a lot of crop diversity. And if those regions in Africa are impacted by, let's say, an increase of extreme droughts, basically that kind of diversity is affected. So it's affecting the food security in those specific regions. But your point is really important because, yeah, as you may know, in the United States and of Europe, which are more related with staple crops, that could be not the perspective, although those regions are basically the breadbaskets around the world. So it is an interesting point, but the way that we define it is to measure the impact of food security.
Thank you. Any other question? I have one question. You said that there is many classes over many one or two different two or more different countries. Is there already some approach how different countries can deal with your research? Is it already applied somewhere?
Yeah, there are, it's an interesting question because, as you may know, basically it's a global analysis. So in different regions, basically the potential of collaboration through, let's say, governments or regional agreements are easiest. For example, in Europe, basically which those countries are covered by the Agricultural Common Policy framework, right? But in some other countries, it's not the case. And especially, I have some examples because in the analysis, in the case of Syria, Israel, this conflict area, they are basically covered by the same kind of cluster, right? But we know that based on the political conflicts, it's not possible that this coordination or collaboration research could be take place easily. So those points are also highlighted in our paper. But yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Let's move to the next presentation. It's about combating sand and dust storms, the performance and value of sustainable land management in arid to subtropical areas, presented by Dominique Maega.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Sehr gut. Ja, ich muss mal kurz. Jetzt noch, vorne zurückgehen.
Perfect. Super. Yeah, hello everybody. I'm happy to present here our topic about combating sand and dust storms, the performance and value of sustainable land management in arid to subtropical areas. When I say about happy to present our topic, I'm talking about quite a few researchers you can see here. We have people from all over the world, and especially also from different university or institutions, and we work together on that topic. I'm happy to present that. Just a short information about myself. I'm a student here. I'm a master's student for water management, environment engineering, but also on GIS. This is why I'm taking part also in this study. We have a quick overview about the topicality of the research, the information about sand and dust storms, the methodology in our paper, or in our future paper, hopefully, and the conclusion. I'm really happy that this report comes out in July 24, that the next 10 years in the United Nations declares the decade of combating sand and dust storms. In this report, there's included that the sand and dust storms affect millions and millions of people all over the world. 2 billion of tons of dust enter the atmosphere annually, quite a lot. Then we have the economic impact, we have the damage to infrastructure, to the agriculture, health costs especially as well. Human activity by itself contributes up to 25% of the global dust emission. And the UNCCD initiative for the future right now already, and also for the future, is monitoring, early warning, and global partnership. And we're also focusing on that. And for sure, the sand and dust storms are also on the agenda for the UNCCD COP16, which are placed here in Saudi Arabia. Also interested that the sand and dust storms, they threaten 11 out of 17 SDGs. So it's really a big topic for all of us. Sand and dust storm. What is a sand and a dust storm? A dust storm is an ensemble of particles of dust or sand energetically lifted to great heights by a strong and turbulent wind. I just want to show you a small video, because then you can really see the huge impact which this sand and dust storms. Sorry. So yeah, you can see great heights. It's quite fast, and it's like a big wall coming like to you. Introduction to our topic. We have 20% of the surface of the Earth are the deserts, okay? And there we have the hyper-arid zones, and these are the permanent main SDS sources. But near that, there are also these arid and subtropical zones, and they are more or less functioning as a protection belt. So it's a natural protection against the sand and dust storms. And we are working on the evaluation of these so-called sustainable land management strategies to combat the sand and dust storms. Why? They are strengthening the resilience against desertification. Then they mitigate the source, sand and dust storm source by itself. This is why we focus on them. See? Okay. How we're going to do that, or how we're already doing that? We have some experts' knowledge to find the thresholds of the different sustainable land management methods. Then we're using Google Earth Engine. I'm going to that afterwards for mapping the reduction of the sustainable land management methods. And we have also the assess of the SLM methods with effectiveness through LP through linear programming. At first, let's have a look for the expert knowledge. We selected, or the expert selected, 4 SLM methods, especially for this paper, with the Saxol tree. This is a drought-resistant desert shrub. Then we have Sula. It's a legume which is also drought-tolerant. Let's call it like this. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Valarani. It's just water, micro-water harvesting. And we have for sure also the conservative agriculture, which is also pretty important in these areas. The information we got from experts, like from the Boku University, here from Stefan Strohmeyer, who says hello to you but he's in the States right now. This is why I'm here presenting the topic. And also from the ICARO, from Mira Haddad, who is working many, many years already with Stefan on that. And we got some information for the SLM from the VOCAD. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but this is really a cool, I call it a cool database. It's the world overview of conservation approaches and technologies. just check out the website there. It's more or less promoting these SLMs, and it's UNCCD recognized. It's also really important. The thresholds. We call it like climate ones. These are precipitation and temperature. Then we have the geographic or origin, however you want to call it. It's the elevation, the slope, and also the land cover. And we have also the soil information by itself. Rock, sand, silt, clay, pH, and also the soil depth. In future, also soil moisture, runoff, and so on, but these are working right now on that. Some of those are more or less just for the suitability, so it's 1010, is it possible or not? And some of them are also like for the performance of the SLM methods by themselves. The red ones are, you can see, these are also necessary for the performance especially. Next step, we're using all of that for the GEE, for the Google Earth Engine, which is a cloud-based platform for analyzing, processing geospatial data, especially satellite imagery here, but many other sources as well. So we already selected the SLM. We have seen that. We are going via the data source. We do some classification, and then we get a suitability map. Is it suitable or is it not suitable? Then we also bring in a SDS source map. We have a matrix calculation, and then we can say what's the performance of this SLM method there. And then it's also really interesting or really important to take the land cover inside, because the reduction potential always depends on the land cover, and then we get this reduction map. Just to the data source, we acquired a few organizations which provide the data sources. Some of them are already in the cloud-based Google Earth Engine platform. Some others are possible to load directly inside, and some we are included. For sure, in the future, we're also having more and more look that this is not only open source, but also open data, that everybody can work with that as well. Yeah, still, we just have to solve that, and the UNCCD map, we have to load directly inside. It looks like that afterwards. If you go to each single threshold, like climate, geographically, and so on, we get a lot of maps, and all of them together, we got this reduction map. It looks like this afterwards. So now we have the reduction map of the Walarani, Sula, Saxol, and conservative agriculture. They are the impacts, but I'm not going deeper in the map because this is just this we just need as an input for the LP model. Reduction map, input for linear programming. So we already worked on all of that, and now we are for the linear programming. Joran, a colleague of us, is doing that. What is linear programming? It's a mathematical technique aimed at optimizing an objective function subject to a set of linear constraints. So the objective is minimize the overall sand and dust storm. So this you can but this you always have to be aware. The decision variables, we have the SLM interventions, so like the reduction maps, and then the location are just a pixel there inside. It's easy like this. Constraints are the budget and the usage. The costs are really important. Where we get this from? Again, from the WOPAT. Check it out. It will always help you. We have the investment costs. It's one time. Then we have the implementation cost. So this investment cost must be for each pixel. A pixel, it's 1 hectare. So we brought really the whole SDS storm, sand and dust storm belt, like from north of Africa till China, we brought down to 100 to 100 meters. So it was quite data intensive, you can imagine. Then the implementation cost, these are always like a tractor or a plug or whatever. Many people can come down to that. So we just need to know how many tractors we use. And then we have a number of hectares for additional investment. Some of the SLM methods after 3 years, maybe that's already the second year after 3 years forward, they need some additional investments. And then we get this example of the linear programming. Please do not ever look for the SDS source reduction. We provide a desert region for that at the time. This is why we just have a reduction to 98.6% of the SDS risk. But still, now you can see if you just have a small budget, there is like here Saxol especially. Saxol, we invent Saxol especially here. But if we get like more and more of the budget, there's the possibility that, especially in this place, that maybe Balarani is will bring us to a higher reduction possibility as well. And this is what the linear programming tells us. So this, just to imagine, this is the SDS risk. From as more as money you get or budget you get, as less the SDS risk at sure. Like you can see here that the SOL is being replaced by the more effective Balarani method as budget growth. And this is like showing progress in the SLM tech. Conclusion for now, we have an effective tool for identifying potential reduction of sand and dust storm sources through sustainable land management methods. We have the clear visualization of cost effectiveness for each SLM method and also the capability to calculate both suitability and likely performance of these SLM methods. And we have the global, but also the localized scale, because we can also bring it down to each country, also from the Armada region and everything. We can also implement there, especially for this region, other coasts and so on. For the future, more intense in the SDS source inclusion. I told you that we have the UNCCD map already there, but maybe, or we are also going to map our own SDS source maps, risk maps. Then we move from the singular objective function to multi-objective optimization, and we do the clustering for suitability maps. If you want to get more info on the whole topic, there's a QR code, it's a guide mitigation and so on. There's a lot of information included. And if you want to, yeah, these are the contact details for further question in the topic. Like I told you, Stefan Sturmer, he's more or less the responsible person, but if you want to get in contact with me, it's also possible. Yeah, thanks for that.
Any questions?
It depends on the quality of the input data.
100% sure.
You have a lot of solid data that say,
Yeah.
but there are many regions where we have only little information.
Yeah.
And all the data that your systems are interpolated or extrapolated.
Right.
So what is your experience?
Experience is hard because we cannot have a look for each region. We have done it now for Jordan and for Uzbekistan because where people, also cultures of people who are working with us, they are there, they are working especially on their topics there, and they give us sometimes the information. In most of the regions, it was quite okay. In other regions, you're totally right that this is always, if you work with spatial data, this is always more or less a problem. In some cases, if we're going to implement especially the soil moisture and others, this maybe can give us some better information if the, how should I say, if the soil really, how should I say, if the compound of the soil is the same what it should be out from the data. So maybe the soil moisture in the future will help us. And this is not that much interpolated, especially for some regions. So we can have a look for that. But yeah, you are sure. This is why I want to, or this is why I showed you also the different data sources. It always depends on them if you work with spatial data and if you take out these informations.
I can add a second question. Yeah. My experience is that if you are in these singular areas, you have a very high influence of trust, of physical and biological trust. I haven't seen any kind of parameterization in that respect.
Right now, not. We are working on that as well. You're right. Right now, not, but we are working on that as well. We just have to focus now on some directions because you have already seen it's quite a lot already for calculation as well. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I think it was a really interesting presentation. My question is more related to the FLM measures that you see. So kind of just curious, yeah, the basis of your selection, was it like all the measures in the have the SLM?
Yeah. Now there are many possibilities of SLM methods, especially this is because also Stefan was working with them already. This is like Stefan Strohmeier was working with them as well, and we just choose now these 4. But in our code, they're working as a dictionary, so we can implement for the future. We can implement every single SLM method. Like if you're interested in any SLM method somewhere, just send me the details of that, and I can give you the information where it is out of the data, where it could be possible or not possible. Yeah, so this I can give you, but we just selected now 4 because they were working on them already.
Thank you very much for the insight. You mentioned at the point that you brought the whole data that you got from once. I mean, okay. You brought it at 1 hectare.
Now, the information for the thresholds we got from WOCAT, and from the data sources, this we brought afterwards down to 1 hectare. Yeah, this we have done. Because some of them are special distances of 2 kilometers, some others are 30 meters. Especially for the slope, it's better you have a really small one, because in the valley you need to get slower than and everything. So some are like already now 30 to 30 meters, some are 2 kilometers to 2 kilometers. For the climate, more or less doesn't matter, because it must be really the same there in big regions.
From a kind of downscaling, or
it's automatically in the Google Earth engine. You can do that. Yeah, this is done. Yeah. This you just tell them what we need as an output, and it gives you the time. Yeah, automatically.
Just wondering, where do you go from such a solution?
It's not only the important input you've seen, like soil, especially now for the slope. Slope is like Valarani, rainwater harvesting slope is really important. And this is also why we're going to input also in the future the runoff. Because especially for the rainwater harvesting, the runoff is really important as well. There is no runoff, it's, yeah. And for this, all of this, we're going to put it down to 1 hectare. And also because they want to use it in the future for the regions like Uzbekistan and Jordan, also to give it maybe to the small farmers as a decision too. Yeah, this is why. In the scalability is.
I imagine with some of these methods, there's a lot of local knowledge or people who are informed. But if you find that there's suitability in another region that doesn't have this kind of knowledge, have you included that in this investment cost area? So,
no, right now not. But this is why we can scale it down to the region, but also region means also country. And this is what we're going to do. And it's not only this, it's also sometimes for air seeding in some regions of the world we pay more or less than in other regions, or especially like for worker or working hours for labor and so on. It's also totally different. There is the possibility. We haven't done it right now. Now it's just like a wider regional approach, or let's say continental approach. But there is the possibility to bring it down to this, because we are working here with every dictionary. So if you get the information, and from some countries already got the information, we will include them and we'll show also the difference. And some SLM methods also, this is maybe interested for you. Some are just like in Asia, like in Asia. Some others are just in North Africa. I guess nobody will take a SLM method from North Africa, or especially a blend from there, and place it somewhere in Asia. So this we need also to check out. Yeah. But there's the possibility, it's working on that.
I have also just a short question. I'm curious, you found out that if you increase the input, Valarani water harvesting would be the most effective. Yeah. Is then the water harvesting used to increase the soil cover? Because in my opinion, the soil cover would be the most appropriate technology to reduce the pest.
There it is, because just for that, if you have a better budget or more budget, you can buy more cloth, I guess, yeah. And this is why they are changing after with more budget and everything. And it's also here because Valarani is working on other land covers than maybe some of the other SLM methods. This is everything included there. So you can go afterwards to each single map, and then you can see the difference in this as well. Yeah, this is right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we come to the defining a target population of environments in Africa for Brachyardia, SP and Guinea grass breeding. It's presented by Rosa Noemi Jauregui.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, the last presentation of the session. I'm Rosa Jauregui. I'm the Tropical Forages Plant Breeder at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT. And today I'm going to present to you a work in progress that we are doing with Brian Mora, a colleague from the Alliance as well, a data scientist, and the support of my colleagues from the Tropical Forages team. We are working on defining a target population of environments for Africa for the Brachyaria and Panicum breeding programs. So in order to show the importance of livestock to the audience that is quite diverse, so we know that livestock is an important economic activity, so it's very important for people, not only in terms of the economic value, but also because of its cultural value and its nutritional value. There are 17 billion heads of livestock in the world globally, from cattle all the way to poultry. And it's also the largest land use user in agriculture. So about 1/3 of the land in agriculture is a pasture or a grassland. And also there are some downsides to the activity. More than 200 million hectares that are under pastures or grasslands are degraded, mainly because of bad management. And also it's one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gases. So in the Tropical Forages breeding team, we have a very important goal, which is to develop improved pastures that can increase animal productivity and reduce the environmental footprint of the activity. So we want to develop forage-based animal feed that can alleviate poverty, increase food and nutrition security, and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions and climate change mitigation. We work on 3 forage crops, which maybe you're not familiar with. One is the interspecific Udocloa. This is the current name of the genus, which is more known as Brachyaria. This is the most advanced program that started in the 1980s and has already 11 apomictic hybrids released to the market through our private sector partner, which is Papalotla Seeds, a seed company based in Mexico with global presence. The other program that we have is the Udocloa humidicola or Brachyaria humidicola program. This is a species that is more suited for the humid tropics. And the last one or newest program that we have is the Panicum maximum program. And Panicum is a species that is quite different from the Brachyarias because it's a high biomass crop, and also it's a little bit more suited for cut and carry systems. And just a brief introduction about the breeding scheme that we use in Brachyaria and Panicum. These are apomic species, so they don't cross naturally. For this reason, in our breeding scheme that lasts 3 years and that we carry out in Colombia, based in Cali, we have 2 years of crossing. So 2 years of a nursery and then a 3rd year of testing the F1 genotypes in the field. And once we do that, we will hand off the most promising lines to the private sector, and they will continue the testing in more locations throughout the world. Our priority target areas are currently Latin America, especially we look at Brazil with more than 100 million hectares of cultivated pastures, if it's one of our target areas. Then Africa, East Africa, and currently expanding to Western Africa, and Southeast Asia, where we can see both in East Africa and in Southeast Asia, a lot of cut and carry systems. which is perhaps opposite or compared to the grazing or more extensive systems that we can find in Latin America. So where are the target population of environment? This is an important question that we are making and that we are trying to answer with our data scientist collaborator. And the target population of environments is actually a cluster of environments that can hold different types of variables or characteristics. So pests and diseases, the production system, the land management, and of course, the environmental conditions. So this group of characteristics can make out a target population or one environment of the target population of environments. And that is very helpful in a breeding program, especially when you want to optimize it and use your resources efficiently. It's very important to design the profile that you will need your cultivars to have, so those characteristics that you will need your cultivars to have in order to be adopted in that environment. And it will also help us to improve the testing efficiency of the program. So for that, we had to first define the study areas. As I mentioned before, our program is located in Colombia. So our main testing locations, or at least the first testing locations that we use, are in this region. But we want to expand to East Africa. And we want to make sure that whatever we select in Colombia will also be useful and adopted in this region. So we define the countries of interest, and then also we define the areas within these countries, the areas of interest. Once we did that, we defined the agroclimatic characteristics. So what are the agroclimatic variables that are important for us for our breeding program? So we defined some traits related to heat stress or temperature, because temperature will affect the rate or the ability of a plant to grow. Then we defined some important variables related to drought and flooding. So in terms of rainfall, how many days of continuous rainfall do we have, or how many days with flooding or drought. And then also we defined what are the soil characteristics that are important for these species. Once we did that, our data scientist colleague went through a number of analysis in order to define those clusters or environments. And he used the silhouette method to define the optimal number of clusters that we are going to be working with. So, and this number turned out to be 4. So this is what we got from the analysis. And you can see in these regions that we had defined where the different clusters fall, the different pixels, and how these clusters look for some of the variables that we have chosen. After doing the analysis in the area of interest, we asked ourselves, where are these clusters or these 4 environments represented in the area where we are currently working in? And this is what we found for Colombia in comparison to East Africa. So after this, we made 2 other important questions, which were, what are the environmental conditions that predominate in each cluster in the area of interest and in Colombia? And what are the, or how could the analysis be further refined? So we compared both environments for each of the variables. So you can see how for instance, for this variable, these are the way the clusters behave throughout the year. These are months of the year from January to December, and how these same environments are found in this other region. And this is another example with temperature, for instance. And finally, we looked at the similarity percentages. Here, what we are trying to find is, here we can find that there are a lot of pixels mapped by the model to the different clusters. But this resolution is quite broad, so we wanted to refine it. What we really want to know is if the locations that we are using are suitable for our testing, and also if they are sufficient. So what we need to find out is if we can work with this type of similarity map where we are more stringent, so we refine the analysis and we make sure that whatever pixels are highlighted here are really comparable to the pixels in the area of interest. So finally, what we are doing, what's coming next, we are going to be defining the TPEs pretty soon for both programs. Then we are going to determine if those locations that we are using are the correct ones, if they are sufficient or not, or changes should be done. And then finally determine what is the percentage of similarity that we need to be working with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I in fact come from a more forestry and ecology background, so I apologize if my questions is quite basic. But how can you compare your work or your research into these specific crops in comparison to native grasses in that area? And do you also check to see that these grasses wouldn't become invasive or impact pollinators?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for your second question, these grasses actually are originally from Africa. Yes, so they are indigenous from East Africa in particular, and they were brought to America like 2 centuries ago and adapted very, very well, so, and invaded actually, but before we could do any invasiveness analysis, and really are the best, the most adopted forages. We have 60 million hectares of one forage in particular in Brazil alone. So the answer to your first question is that these forages are really very productive and very well adapted. And in fact, one of the problems that the program first started to target was pest diseases. So of course, they, as coming from a foreign area into America, they encounter different pests. And the first target was to make them resistant to the pests present in Latin America. Yeah.
If there is the question. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on the honeycomb? That's Bacteria.
Okay.
How did it evolve?
Well, Panicum maximum, I don't know if you may be familiar with one of the most cultivated varieties is Mombasa. I don't know if you've heard about it. No. So it's a large biomass. Usually it's a high growing biotype. And so it's high biomass, high fertility requiring. So it requires more, either better management than Brachiaria or more fertile soils. And usually it has a little bit more protein or nutritional quality than Brachiaria. So that's why it's very much used for cut-and-carry systems, although there are shorter forms that can also be used for river grading.
What is the percentage similarity that you accept?
My colleague is saying we shouldn't go beyond 30%.
30% similarity between the
No,
Colombian and
I guess that would be 70% similarity. He's aiming for 80. Yeah.
Any other questions? No, I want to thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much.
We have 5 minutes. If there are any questions for the previous speakers. If not, so I thank all the presenters for really presenting the very good research. I thank also the audience. It's very numerous here and also very active participation. Thank you very much. And with this, I close this session.
Have fun.